Hello, everybody around the world. Thank you for joining me for Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. Let's get into what the fuck is happening in this world. God, I shouldn't have cursed right at the beginning. It's good to see. I like to save those up and then shoot them all out at the end. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well out there. Thank you for being an amazing human being and choosing to take your time to at least watch upwards of 30% of this episode. Some of you will watch all of it, but to those who watch 30%, that's awesome too. I love you guys too. You're okay. You're okay in my book. You're not like up here, but you're here. So I'll give you 30% of my overall appreciation. Thank you for being here. I'm going to get into the new documents, classified documents that have been revealed showing the U.S. lied to us about the invasion of Syria, which, again, I think many of us were talking about for years. But as I like to say, you may know something, but it's good to see the documents. It's good to have that day where you're like, there it is. There it fucking is. I was right again, as I tend to be, because, not because I'm some kind of genius, just because when you understand the machinations of the system, you understand what the motive is and how it works and how the U.S. empire works. You tend to know with just a little window of plus minus, how these systems are going to shake out. What the end result is going to be. What the lies are for the most part, even before you have the documents. But then you get the documents and go, there it is. So we have a there it is moment for the invasion of Syria that I'm going to bring you today. Update on Julian Assange and his extradition. Illinois becoming the first state to eliminate cash bail. I'm going to tell you why that's important and how it's going to work. New sanctions designed to crush our old friend Nicaragua. Just so many important stories coming at you right now. And then at the end of the hour, for a little members only segment over on Locals. If you want to support this show, join up at leecamp.locals.com. A little member only segment. I will tackle the whole Russell Brand stuff, as well as the Hassan Minhaj revelations. All of that at the end of the hour on Locals. But thank you for joining me, everyone. No matter where you're joining from, really appreciate you being here. Please hit like, hit thumbs up, hit share, all of those good things. Okay, so we're starting out with Seymour Hersh, who did some excellent reporting at the time, but he did not reveal this document at the time, this classified document he had access to, and he didn't exactly give the details of it back when this was happening. So you'll recall it was about 10 years ago. Well, I'll just go ahead and get into showing this to y'alls. Y'alls, that's when you want to pluralize y'all, because y'all wasn't plural enough, because it was just one y'all. And you want to, I'm talking all y'alls. Okay, so we're talking multiple y'alls. Every y'all there is coming together looking at this. This is a new article by Seymour Hersh, this one. But he's talking about, and he shows the documents at the end of the article. But he actually posts the classified document. But he says 10 years ago, amid calls for the U.S. to intervene in the Syrian civil war, and Seymour Hersh, amazing journalist, but part of the way he speaks, the way he writes, is not the way I would choose to. He actually gives more credit, kind of less cynicism, to the American machine, the American empire, than I would when considering these things. So he says, that, like right there, he said, the U.S. 10 years ago was facing calls to intervene in the Syrian civil war. What he doesn't mention is the U.S. was also kind of helping create the Syrian civil war. It was that calls to intervene. It wasn't like the world was like, please save Syria, United States empire. I mean, maybe some idiots were, but very few. For the most part, it was the U.S. being like, we got to get our shit in there. And they helped create the war, the battle that was going on in Syria. They were funding and arming rebels even before it really got going. So it wasn't like Syrian civil war broke out. The U.S. was sitting on the sidelines going, I wonder if we should do anything. And then the whole world was like, please, Superman, won't you save the damsel in distress? And so it's a little bit how it sounds. But, that's probably good for Seymour Hersh to take the less cynical view so that people don't question his writing. But amid calls for the U.S. to intervene in the Syrian civil war against the reviled Bashar al-Assad, the White House did not receive crucial intelligence because it was politically inconvenient. I actually disagree on this point. I think they probably did receive it. They probably are claiming they did not receive it. But anyway, the case involved a 5-page all-source report prepared for the Defense Intelligence Agency about a strategic weapon, the nerve gas sarin, that was known to be in the hands of the Islamic opposition to the Syrian government led by Assad. As you all probably already know, chemical weapons are banned internationally. Geneva Conventions, you can't use chemical weapons, except you can use them on your own people, which is why they will spray tear gas, etc., at protests. So as long as the U.S. is using chemical weapons on us and me, and, yes, I have been hit at least once by the tear gas at protests. So as long as you're using it on your own people, totally fine, totally cool. We're all in agreement. That is excellent. But internationally, totally against Geneva Conventions and, the rules of war, if war has rules. And so he's saying right here, there's a 5-page document, 5-page report saying they know that not Assad has chemical weapons. Now Assad may have had chemical weapons, and they may have known that as well. But this report was saying, we know the opposition to Assad has chemical weapons. The detailed report, which included vital information gleaned from intercepts by the National Security Agency, did not reach the White House because, so I came to understand, it revealed the kind of truth that presidents then and now viewed as political poison. So, I suppose there actually are two possibilities. One is he's wrong on that aspect of this report. It did get to the White House. They're just saying, we never even saw that. Or, as I've said before, the U.S. president is in many ways less powerful than people understand. Like there's a military industrial complex that runs the same direction no matter what the president's doing. There is a CIA that seems wholly unaccountable to either Congress or the president. And, we're living in a post-CIA coup world where they couped our government 1963. But so, yeah. It is possible that they had this information and kept it from Obama. But either way, the point is the people really calling the shots knew that the opposition to Assad had sarin gas. The document with my handwritten notes is posted at the bottom. Seymour Hersh says, the issue began in 2013 when there were allegations of Syrian use of chemical weapons in its war against a merged group of jihadist forces known as Al-Nusra, whose goal was to overthrow the Assad government and establish an Islamic State in Syria. Al-Nusra had been designated by the State Department late in 2012 as a foreign terrorist organization and identified as an affiliate of Al-Qaeda. Yet the U.S. went on after 2012 to fund and arm them in the fight against Assad. So the U.S. was funding and arming terrorist organizations in order to fight Assad. And not good. Maybe we as American citizens should be like, we don't like when our government funds and arms terrorists. So there's that. But just to give a little background that he doesn't exactly get into, and I don't know the precise timeline. Well, I'll say that in 1 second because I'm about to get to part of it. There were some in the Obama administration who cynically argued that al-Nusra should be aided in its war against the Assad government and dealt with after Assad's ouster. It wasn't just some. It was fully done. We were funding and arming a lot of them. Anyway, in August 2012, Obama publicly stated that, quote, we have been very clear to the Assad regime that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus. So you'll probably recall this. Around 2012, Obama says it's a red line in Syria. We're going to get fully involved if they use chemical weapons. And initially, when Obama said he was going to go into Syria or bomb Syria, there was actually a pretty large outcry across America. The amount of manufacturing consent that needed to be done to get America to support U.S. intervention in Syria hadn't really been done. So then Obama backs down. And I remember being pretty impressed for that year. I was like, we fucking did it. We, like, activists stood up and created enough of an anger over the fury over this invasion of Syria that Obama backed down. But of course, what was really happening, maybe it was a bit naive of me, was that they realized they hadn't manufactured enough consent. And so they went back into it. They basically backed down for a year and then invaded Syria. So I assume that the internal establishment knew that it wasn't like they were actually going to not invade and destroy Syria in so many ways. They just backed down for a little while. But, okay, so you may recall there were two major chemical weapons moments in Syria. I believe that the two cities were Duma and Ghouta. And, you know, I get these things confused, but what I do know is that one of them was ultimately proven by 4 OPCW whistleblowers who were fired for being whistleblowers, who had to either leave on their own accord or get fired. OPCW being the only really chemical weapons watchdog that was supposed to be independent. But these whistleblowers say that the reports were lied and faked, so that were lied about and faked, so that they could claim that Assad had used chemical weapons when they couldn't actually find evidence of it. So that was one of the attacks. The other attack is the one that, maybe I said the city earlier. I think I said Ghouta, was the one that Seymour Hersh is talking about right here, where it's more clear that a chemical weapon was used, but it's unclear as to who used it. And you have to ask yourself, it of course would be insane for Assad to hear Obama say chemical weapons, red line, and then him go, you know what? I'm going to use a chemical weapon just once. I'm just going to use it once, and it's just going to kill, a few hundred people or whatever the number was. And that's the only time I'm going to use it. I'm just going to do that one thing just to ensure that the U.S. military, the largest military in the world, is fully involved in my country against me. That makes a lot of sense, right? If you're a chess player, that's just genius. Great. So, of course, even at the time, even when this happened, I realize I say this a lot, but anyone with a half a brain cell knew that it wasn't Assad. The rebels had every reason to either fake a chemical attack or use a chemical weapon in order to get the U.S. military further into Syria on their side to help them in the battle. Assad had essentially zero reason to use a chemical weapon just to ensure that he would be up against the largest military in the world. You don't have to be smart to figure that out. It's just common sense. Anyway, in August 2013, there was high confidence assessment within the U.S. government that a nerve agent had killed more than 1,000 people and that the Assad regime was responsible. That's what they were saying at the time. All this was being conveyed to the American press and public by the administration. Of course, our mainstream media did what they do so well, which is just be stenographers for the State Department. So during those years, you just saw story after story after story after story. Assad used chemical weapons, chemical weapons, chemical weapons. And here we are with the documents proving I and a few others were right all along that no, Assad didn't use chemical weapons. Over the next few weeks, doubts about who did what in Syria were being conveyed directly to Obama. As Obama himself told a journalist before leaving office, he was advised by the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, that the case that the Assad regime carried out the gas attack was not a slam dunk. Obama eventually canceled plans for a major strike on military and industrial sites throughout Syria. So that was the moment I was talking about, Obama backing down. The DIA's 2-month-old all-source intelligence assessment, which included some specific data from the National Security Agency, making clear that there were 2 possible suspects for any nerve gas attack. Syria, meaning Assad, and Al-Nusra, meaning Al-Qaeda, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. The document emphasizes the threat of al-Nusra's chemical arsenal. So this is the document that says, quote, the Alnusra Front Associated Sarin Production Cell is the most advanced sarin plot since 9/11. Arrests in Iraq and Turkey have disrupted the cell's operations. However, we assess the intent to produce advanced chemical weapon remains. Previous intelligence community focus had been almost entirely on the Syrian CW stockpiles. Now we see Al-Nusra Front attempting to make its own CW. Relative freedom of operations within Syria leads us to assess the group's CW aspirations will be difficult to disrupt in the future. One factor contributing to its freedom of operation was that America and its allies were not targeting it. So, yeah, the U.S. wanted al-Nusra, these terrorists who would behead non-believers in the middle of the streets. They wanted them to be involved in this. They wanted them to grow. They wanted them to have chemical weapon capabilities. And so they backed off going after any of them. Sure enough, they, I guess, used a chemical weapon, sarin, and killed over 1,000 people. And then we were told Assad did it. Now, many of us at the time were saying, no, he fucking didn't. I mean, you don't have to be brilliant to figure this one out. And sure enough, here are the documents. And in the recent weeks, I've brought you, I need to move on to more stories because I want to get to a lot in this hour. But in recent weeks, I've brought you documents showing that I and many of us on the independent media circuit, for lack of a better name, were right about the coup, the U.S.-backed coup in India. These documents were right about, this. Several months ago, I brought you the CIA saying that, finally admitting that the Cubans don't have some sort of space-age acoustic weapon that only hits U.S. diplomats and gives them mild headaches. And I'm forgetting a couple of others. I'm trying to think, but there's a couple others where documents have come out revealing exactly as I and so many others had said, but exactly the opposite of what your mainstream media had said. So now that you have these documents and you see them and we all see them, do you think that the mainstream media is going to apologize for their 2 straight years, maybe more than that, of nonstop, completely false Syria coverage? Do you think you're going to hear that? Do you think you're going to hear that in the Situation Room with Anderson Cooper or whoever the fuck host that? Wolf Blitzer, I don't know. Do you think you're going to hear that from Fox News or MSNBC or PBS or NPR or NBC or ABC or CBS or the fucking channel that always has the dog reality shows? Do you think any of them are going to come out and go, hey, turns out we fucked up. We done fucked up. Like just CNN breaking news, we done fucked up for 2 years straight. No, you're not going to hear any of that. Partially because they want to defend their brand. They can't say they got something wrong. They can't admit that. They got to defend their brand, defend their propaganda. But also because that's their job. Their job was to do 2 years of propaganda, manufacturing consent for war with Syria, 10% of which we still, quote unquote, own. We're still occupying 10% of Syria, mainly the oil fields, stealing oil on a daily basis from that country. We're using continued economic war right this minute to continue to crush Syria, where 94% of all people in Syria are below the poverty line, meaning all struggling, all dying from preventable diseases. I mean, not all dying, but many of them dying from preventable diseases. Just the level of hardship done so that we can what? Steal some oil, control the world. I mean, it's just fucking insane. But there it is. And I can't wait for the apologies. The apologies from the mainstream media are going to come rolling in any minute now. Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to be getting those emails. In fact, if you're with the mainstream media and you're watching right now, you can email me, leecampmail@gmail.com, and just shoot your apologies this way. I'm looking forward to it. Look forward to it. And I mean, this is kind of pre-Russiagate. Now you're just, if you're left of anything on mainstream media, you're called a Russian agent or a Russian apologist or a Putin lover or whatever. But before that, so like, 2015, 2016, 2014, those years, one of the main things to call people was an Assad apologist because you were speaking the truth about this stuff. that made you an Assad apologist because you cared to have the truth. It's just vomitous. Okay, so moving on, I want to give you this update on Julian Assange, and this is good news, although most of what's coming out about Assange has been bad news, both his health and the fact that they very well may extradite him in the middle of the night, and no one's going to be ready for it, and that's the part of their goal, that there would be no protest before he's actually extradited, because we will wake up one morning and they will say he's in the U.S. And they can do that because there's no... he has no connection to the outside world unless they want him to. So a windowless van leaves Belmarsh prison, goes to an airport in the middle of the night, and arrives in the United States. We're going, if he's extradited, we will find out once he's on American soil. And that's how horrifying this is. But here is a positive update. Julian, this is from The Guardian, which is largely a pile of shit these days. But anyway, Julian, and by the way, The Guardian, also one of the outlets that threw Julian Assange under the bus. They worked with him extensively before the U.S. empire decided he was going to be, enemy number one. And then The Guardian just hurled him under the bus. Couldn't throw him under the bus fast enough. Julian Assange, more than 60 Australian MPs urged the U.S. to let the WikiLeaks founder walk free. 60 Australian members of parliament. In case I need to remind you, Julian Assange is an Australian citizen, and he's in Britain, in prison, and he has never operated from the United States. He's not an American citizen, doesn't have an American corporation, never lived in America, none of those things. Yet we're trying to prosecute him under our laws for telling the truth about crimes that America has done, that the United States has done. Anyway, that's why this is important that it's Australia. 60 Australian federal politicians have explicitly called on the U.S. to drop the prosecution of Julian Assange, warning of a sharp and sustained outcry in Australia if the WikiLeaks founder is extradited. With a small cross-party delegation due to fly to Washington next week, The Guardian can reveal the lobbying trip has won the open support of 63 members of Australia's House of Representatives and Senate. So this is a big move. It's also got the support of the Prime Minister of Australia, who I'm glad he's supporting it. He says he's brought up the issue to Biden, but he's also said that's all he can do. Like just a weak little, I tried. I told the old guy there that's sitting there that I would prefer that Julian Assange come back to his home country, but I can't. That's all I can do, really. So it's a lot of that shit. However, this is big to have this many members of parliament in Australia fighting for Assange's freedom at this pivotal moment when we all fear that he may be extradited tomorrow without so much as a fucking phone call to his wife or anything. So be ready for that. If that happens, we got to protest like we've never protested before if he is extradited. But, obviously continue the protest now as well. And I will continue to bring you updates. This is the most horrific. I mean, what this means for journalism, not just for Assange himself, is just unbelievable. That the U.S. mainstream media and UK mainstream media are not standing up for him is insane. And I don't mean one little article. There was one article by the New York Times saying he should be freed. I'm talking every goddamn day, because if the U.S. can say to any journalist around the fucking world, fuck, that they dislike what he said, and therefore he or she said, and therefore they grab them, ship them to the United States, and put them in solitary confinement, which is torture, for the rest of their lives. How is that not U.S. world fascist law? How is that freedom of press? Not just freedom of press here in the U.S., but freedom of press anywhere. Like, you should all be fucking terrified of that. And yet instead, these people are such bootlickers at these journalistic outlets that claim to be journalistic outlets, these media organizations, that they will not fight against against it. They just back down. They're just quiet, silent, nothing. That fucking douche, Jim Acosta, is that his name? Who he's on one of the mainstream outlets. He even put out a book called A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth. A whole book about journalism under Donald Trump being a dangerous time to tell the truth. Not a mention of Assange. Not a mention. Because he's one of the liberal fucking, pro-Assange, maybe not pro-Assange, pro-American empire stooges. And he thinks it's a dangerous time to tell the truth while not mentioning the guy that's actually being tortured for telling the truth. That's how sad they are. That's how pathetic they are. Okay. And yes, Craig, that's right. Someone mentioned Craig Murray has been in town in the United States. I think it's his first tour of the United States. And he went to the courthouse where Assange would be prosecuted if he is extradited. And he basically just went there to, he's a former MP in Britain, but they've gone after him too. He just went there to see it, as he said, and they wouldn't let him in. And apparently you're supposed to be allowed in, like anybody can walk in and see the place, but they wouldn't let him in. Okay, moving on. Illinois has become I want to get to a lot of topics. Illinois has become the first state in the nation to eliminate cash bail. That went into effect today. And this is massive. It's a big win. And it is so important. Couple of points that need to be made before I even get into how their system is going to work. The U.S. is one of a whopping 2 countries, 2 around the world that have cash bail as a system, full-on cash bail. 2. Meaning there's like 198 or so, however many countries. There's basically 198 countries that do not have this system because it is disgusting and it is a crime against humanity. And cash bail results in the U.S. being the largest prison state in the world with over 2 million prisoners in jail at any given time. Now, I will ask you, pop quiz of our over 2 million prisoners. Let's see. I want to see the exact number. How many prisoners are in the U.S.? Well, then it's gone down a lot. They're using prisoners as a different. All right, this is saying 1.2 million, but either I have it wrong or they're not counting jails and they're only counting prisons with that estimate. I don't know. I don't have time to dig into the numbers at the moment, but whatever it is, millions, whatever. I do know the exact percentage of those that is people who have not been convicted yet. So it means they've been caught by police or maybe they were innocent or whatever. But that number may have also just been federal and not include state prisoners, et cetera. Anyway, but the percentage, guess in your mind, pop quiz, what percentage of the prisoners in the largest prison state in the land have not yet been convicted? Meaning they're in prison or jail or some otherwise being held and they haven't yet been convicted of anything. Okay, you got that? No, you got that percentage you think it is? The answer at the moment is 74%. The vast majority of prisoners across the U.S. have not yet been convicted. Either they're being held awaiting trial or they're being held awaiting a judge to rule or they're being held for other reasons. 74%. And there's examples of these prisoners sitting in jail or prison for years before they ever get to see a trial or a judge. There's an example on Rikers. I'm sorry, I can't remember the young man's name, but on Rikers, a famous story a few years ago. He was underage when he was first grabbed by police, like because they thought he fit a description or something. Underage, and they kept him in prison in Rikers Island, an adult prison, for 3 years before he finally got out, and then he took his own life not much longer afterwards. And that's without being convicted. Okay, so 2 countries. 198 countries get it right, and we in the Philippines get it wrong. Here's how it will work in Illinois. Under the new law, people charged with the state's lowest level offenses will likely never set foot in a jail cell. Not God, because I'm an atheist. So thank, no, not heavens. I don't believe in those either. Thank trees. Trees are good. They're reliable. They're always there. As George Carlin said, I could pray to the sun, or Joe Pesci. Thank Joe Pesci. They will likely never set foot in a jail cell, including at a police station after their arrest. People charged with an offense lower than a Class A misdemeanor, littering, some speeding charges, and possession of marijuana over the legal limit will likely be released with a citation or a court date without having to be processed at a police station. Wow. Isn't that sane to not take someone who's littering down to a police station? Because before, it was insane to grab someone and take them to jail because they were littering. It was literally insane to put them in jail for littering. However, law enforcement agencies will still be given discretion. That's what we need, is for those fucking brutes to have discretion. Discretion in certain cases. For example, if a person continues to commit the offense after being cited, then they can be taken into custody. And that has got to be a sin. You get grabbed by a cop for littering, he gives you a ticket or a citation, and you then go, I'm going to ball that up and throw that on the ground. What do you think of this? What do you think of this Mars bar wrapper? Boom. What do you think? What do you think of these Tootsie Pop wrappers? Boom. What do you think of this old lottery ticket? Boom. On the ground, bitch. Like, now, while that would be rather juvenile, I still don't think that should put you in jail. I am opposed to littering. I am absolutely opposed to littering. I still don't think you should be in jail for it. People can also be taken into custody if they can't be properly identified or if police believe a person poses a danger to the community or themselves. Well, if they're littering and they can't be stopped, clearly they pose a danger, all right? Someone could slip on that Tootsie Pop wrapper, and then God knows what'll happen. Class A misdemeanor offenses are slightly more serious, but still cover a lot of ground. They include shoplifting, simple battery, trespassing in a car or on property, possessing alcohol as a minor, and street racing. Street racing. A person facing a Class A misdemeanor will be arrested and taken to a police station for booking, but should be released with a future court date instead of being taken to jail. So yet again, these all sound like amazingly rational game plans. Like, you catch someone for fucking having a little weed over the limit or street racing or dropping a rapper, and you don't, and I don't mean killing a musician when I say dropping a rapper, I mean candy bar rapper. You don't imprison them. You fucking don't. Prison didn't even used to be much of a thing until a few hundred years ago. Like, yeah, there were prisons, but they were reserved for like axe-wielding maniacs. It wasn't like, yeah, sure, there was a dungeon under the castle, but it was a combination of like dudes who had literally like eaten someone, and then, you know, the king's brother who he was afraid might take his space. Like, that was all that was in the dungeon. It was, you know, the king's son, who he thought was a bit of a sissy, and so he put him down there, and then like a guy who was, raping farm animals or something. Like, that was it. It was just 4 people in the dungeon. It's only in the last few hundred years that we were like, let's have prisons the size of Connecticut that we just put every fucking guy we don't like. And if he's got a skin color we don't like, and if he's of a class we don't like lower class. A person charged with a felony can face a year or more in prison if convicted, but many felony charges are can also result in probation, meaning a person wouldn't necessarily face jail time if convicted. Under the law, many felonies are not detainable. These tend to be cases that don't include allegations of violence, including gun possession without the proper permit. If a case is not eligible for detention, a person might be released from the police station after booking. Anyway, I'm not going to read every detail, but all of this sounds incredibly sane. And it's how a lot of our systems should work. Now, of course, I would love to get to that place one day where we get rid of like 99% of all police. And instead, we have communities that watch out for each other. And you have community policing where you care for each other and you know each other. And therefore, you don't have to have idiots with guns walking in and just shooting people, killing over 2,000 people a year. I know your average document or report or article or whatever will tell you it's over 1,000 people a year that the U.S. police kill. However, that's not including the Lancet Medical Journal studies that have shown that actually over 55% of police killings are not written down as police killings. They don't go into the books as cops killing someone because they go, oh, he ran out of oxygen. Oh, after I pulled my taser out, he suffered from excess electricity to the heart. That's not my fault. He just had an allergy to electricity. So a lot of the medical records end up being like that. But all right, let's move it along. One more story, and then I'm going to jump to rumble.com/leecamp. Sorry, not sash. Rumble.com/leecamp, free to watch there, as well as my locals page. So those two places will keep going after this next story with the rest of this live stream. And for those of you who joined late, I have a bunch of stories coming up for you, but also at the end of the hour, I'm going to do a special segment just for members over at leecamp.locals.com, where I'll address the Russell Brand accusations, reports, etc., and as well as the revelations about Hassan Minhaj. So it'll be a comedian allegations segment coming up over on Locals at the end of the hour. But all right, this is U.S. trying to continues to try to destroy Nicaragua. Nicaragua was recently rated as the country in the world where the people have the most peace of mind. So in many ways, the most peace-filled country in the world. When polled, and you know, we're talking massive polling. We're not talking they asked 4 people. Nicaraguans had a higher percentage of their time they have peace of mind than any other country. So the U.S. is trying to crush the most peace-filled country in the world, which is kind of par for the course. That's kind of our rep on the street. We're kind of known for that shit. This is coming from popularresistance.org, an excellent source. We often repost their stuff at radndmedia.com. That's my media aggregator site, radndmedia.com, where you can get your news every morning. And you get it from, it's not me writing it, it's coming from a lot of great sources. Anyway, the headline is New U.S. Sanctions Bill Designed to Bring Misery to Nicaraguans. As we all know, the U.S. already has imposed sanctions on Nicaragua, but they haven't yet brought, and the other reason the U.S., to just interrupt real quick, the other reason the U.S. hates Nicaragua is because they are socialist and in many ways, and they've privatized the state assets and things like that. Also, even though they're not very wealthy there, partially because of the economic war by the United States, people are happy. So people live happy lives, far happier than in the United States, and yet it's not an incredibly wealthy country. Well, we can't have that, right? That looks really bad. That's that's what Chomsky called the threat of the good example. You can't have a country just being poor and happy. The fuck? What if Americans see that and think that could work? That would be horrifying. So the U.S. already has sanctions on Nicaragua, but they haven't yet brought about the kind of hunger and poverty and suffering that some U.S. policymakers think is necessary to overthrow the popular Nicaraguan government. So there is a new sanctions bill co-sponsored by Marco Rubio, who's one of the top pieces of shit in Congress, and Tim Kaine. So isn't it great? You're seeing the Democrats and Republicans come together on this. That's amazing. I thought they didn't agree on anything. I thought Democrats and Republicans are just polar opposites, like two magnets that don't attract. They never come together on nothing. Oh, wait. They actually agree on 90% of the structural issues of this country and foreign policy 90% of the time. I just remembered that. Isn't this beautiful to see them come together? Tim Kaine, Marco Rubio, former presidential candidate for the Republicans, Tim Kaine, former vice presidential nominee for the Democrats, coming together to crush or try and crush the most peace-filled country in the world. So they're coming up with a new bill co-sponsored by the two of them to increase unemployment in Nicaragua, crush the Nicaraguan economy, decrease revenue for the government's popular programs so that the government will be less popular. The stated goal is the overthrow of the Nicaraguan government. So they just admit this outright, that the U.S. is basically, if you're trying to overthrow a country's government, even if you're not using guns, does that not mean you're at war with them? So apparently, without stating it, we're at war with Nicaragua. What have they done to us? I'm just wondering if anybody could throw it in the comments in the chat there. What was it that Nicaragua did to the United States that meant we needed to go to war with them and overthrow their government? Because it just slipped my mind. I know it was something. It was like, wasn't it like a Pearl Harbor type thing? They like attacked our Navy and just blew up tons of ships and everybody was running away on fire. Just, right? Nicaragua did that, right? Just a couple of years ago. That's why we're at war with them, isn't it? It was like a Pearl Harbor thing. But it was in Norfolk, right? I don't know if I have that right. Maybe someone throw it in the comments what it was that Nicaragua did to us that fucked us up this much. The article continues. The stated goal is to overthrow the Nicaraguan government and a free and fair election to replace Daniel Ortega. I love the idea of we're going to coup your country to bring you free and fair elections. We're going to crush your society to bring you free and fair elections. Another target is the repeal of the Foreign Agents Law, a law in Nicaragua that prohibits, get this, you ready for this horrible thing? Prohibits foreign governments from funding its elections and requires the registration of lobbying activities on behalf of foreign governments. So Nicaragua has something in their law stopping foreign governments from funding their elections. And the U.S. is furious because we apparently have the right, or should have the right, to purchase every other country and purchase their governing body, then have their resources sold off to us. So yeah, purchase every other country. That law stopping foreign countries from invading their elections is very similar to U.S. laws, but the bill's authors demand that foreign governments be allowed to underwrite political parties in Nicaragua's elections. That's why they call it the Sovereignty Bill, because all of the sanctions bills are ironically named. Literally, this is a bill trying to create a coup in Nicaragua, and it's called the Sovereignty Bill. These people are sociopaths on just like a whole other level. Like you can't even, I mean, it'd be like if your next door neighbor came over and set your dog on fire and then said, I did it for Dog Health Day. I did it because I love your dog. It's like, you are a maniac. The fuck? It was bad enough to set him on fire. Now you have to tell me you did it for his health? The new bill calls for suspension of Nicaragua's participation in the Dominican Republic Central American Free Trade Agreement. Yeah, no other country can have a free trade agreement that doesn't just give everything to the United States. That's not allowed. It shouldn't be allowed. The U.S. government will be ordered to review any benefits that Nicaragua might receive from the agreement. Like the idea, the gall of like, we should get to review everything you buy or purchase or sell, or because, you know, we're the U.S. and you did that horrible Pearl Harbor thing where you destroyed all our ships, right? Nicaragua did that. Anyway, that's the gist of it. We're now ratcheting up our attempt to destroy the most peace-filled country in the world, according to polling. Okay, guys, the rest of this live stream will be at rumble.com/leecamp. Join me there. It's free to watch there, and locals will continue streaming as well. So those two places. Join me. If you're not a member, join me at rumble.com/leecamp, and it is free there to keep watching. I have big stories, something on Elon Musk. Let's see if well, it depends on how many I can get to. So I'm not going to reel them all off because I might not get to them all. But let's see. And then, of course, I have that special segment after the hour. So, all right. See you over rumble.com/leecamp. And just give me a minute here.